The stars above Earth had never seemed more beautiful than they did on the night everything changed. Dr. Maria Santos stood on the roof of the Global Observatory, watching the twinkling lights that had fascinated humans since the beginning of time. She did not know that those same stars now carried ships filled with beings who saw her as nothing more than property. The Zephyrian Empire ruled 10,000 star systems. Their ships were massive metal beasts that could destroy planets. Their soldiers wore armor that could stop bullets, and their weapons could melt steel in seconds. For 10,000 years, they had swept across the galaxy, taking what they wanted from any world they found. To them, conquest was as natural as breathing. Emperor Vexthul sat on his crystal throne aboard the flagship Dominator. His skin was pale blue, and his eyes were solid black. Around his neck hung a collar made from the bones of the last king who had dared to refuse him. He had just received a report about a new world his scouts had discovered. "Tell me about this planet," he said to Commander Zixtal, his head of military operations. "It is called Earth, my lord. The beings there call themselves humans. Our scans show they have basic technology. Nuclear weapons, simple spacecraft, primitive computers. Nothing that could threaten us." The Emperor laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "How many of them are there?" 8 billion, my lord. Perfect for our labor needs. Our scientists say they are Class 7 servo species, smart enough to work complex machines but not smart enough to be dangerous. Excellent. Send the subjugation fleet. 500 ships should be more than enough for such primitives. The commander bowed. "What are your orders regarding resistance?" "The usual. Give them 3 days to surrender. If they refuse, destroy their major cities until they submit. We need workers, not heroes." The Zephyrian fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of Earth's solar system. Their arrival sent ripples through space that every radio telescope on Earth detected immediately. Within hours, the news had spread across the planet. Humanity was no longer alone in the universe. At the United Nations headquarters in New York, emergency meetings began immediately. President Chen of the Global Defense Council stared at the massive alien ships on the screen. Each one was bigger than the largest city on Earth. "How long until they reach us?" she asked. 18 hours, replied General Morrison, head of Earth's combined military forces. "They're moving slowly, almost like they want us to see them coming." "Maybe they want to talk," suggested Secretary Williams hopefully. Their answer came 12 hours later. Every television, radio, and internet connection on Earth suddenly displayed the same message. Emperor Vexthul appeared on screens everywhere, his black eyes seeming to stare directly at each viewer. "People of Earth," his voice was cold and mechanical, translated by advanced alien computers. "You have been chosen to serve the Zephyrian Empire. Your planet will become part of our great civilization. 2 billion of your strongest and smartest will come with us to work on our worlds and stations." President Chen felt ice in her stomach as the message continued. "This is not a request. This is a command. You have 72 hours to prepare your people for transport. Your leaders will identify which humans are most suitable for service. Those selected should consider themselves honored to serve the Empire." The Emperor paused, his thin lips curving into what might have been a smile. "Do not think to resist us. Your weapons are toys compared to ours. Your ships cannot even leave this star system. Accept your new role, and your people will be treated well. Refuse, and we will take what we need from the ashes of your cities." The transmission ended. For several seconds, every human on Earth sat in stunned silence. Then, the screaming began. In the Global Defense Council chambers, President Chen looked around the table at the world's leaders. Fear filled every face she could see. "Options?" she asked quietly. General Morrison cleared his throat. "Military response would be suicide. Their smallest ship outguns our entire combined fleet." "Diplomatic options?" Secretary Williams shook his head. "They're not interested in negotiations. This is a demand, not an offer." So we just give them 2 billion people? President Chen's voice cracked slightly. The room fell silent. Outside the windows, they could see people running in the streets. Car alarms and sirens filled the air as panic spread across the city. But in hidden bunkers deep beneath mountains around the world, other conversations were taking place. Men and women in unmarked uniforms sat around tables covered with documents marked with symbols most humans had never seen. Colonel Sarah Martinez looked at her team in the Colorado facility. "Gentlemen, ladies, it seems our long wait is over. Are we authorized to proceed with protocol preparations?" asked Dr. Kim, the chief scientist. "Not yet, but start warming up the systems. If this goes the way I think it will, we're going to need everything." Above them, the alien fleet moved closer to Earth. The Zephyrians prepared their conquest, confident in their overwhelming superiority. They had done this to 100 worlds before. They expected Earth to surrender quickly, like all the others. They did not know that humans had been preparing for this day for much longer than anyone could imagine. They did not know about the hidden bases, the secret weapons, or the sleeping giants that their arrival was about to awaken. As the 72-hour deadline began counting down, both sides prepared for what was coming. Only one of them understood what that really meant. The 72 hours passed like a nightmare that moved too slowly and too fast at the same time. Across Earth, people said goodbye to families, not knowing if they would ever see them again. Governments tried to decide which of their citizens to sacrifice to the alien demands. But when the deadline arrived, President Chen stood before the cameras with her answer. "To the Zephyrian Empire," she said, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. "Earth's answer is no. We will not give you our people. We will not become your slaves. If you want to take humans, you will have to fight for every single one." Emperor Vex Thul received the message aboard his flagship. He did not seem surprised or angry. If anything, he looked bored. "Commander Zixtal," he said calmly, "begin the demonstration. Destroy their 3 largest cities. That should convince them to be more reasonable." The commander bowed and sent the orders. 3 Zephyrian warships moved toward Earth, their weapons charging with deadly energy. The ship approaching New York was the Destroyer of Hopes, captained by Zorath, a veteran of 50 conquered worlds. He had seen this scene before. The primitives always resisted at first. A few destroyed cities usually changed their minds quickly. "Target the center of their largest population cluster," he ordered his weapons officer. "Full power. We want to leave a crater they can see from space." But as his ship entered Earth's atmosphere, something unexpected happened. Missiles rose from hidden locations around the city, not the simple rockets Zephyrian intelligence had detected, but something far more advanced. The missiles moved in patterns that seemed impossible, weaving through space like living things. "Defensive systems online," Captain Zorath shouted, but it was too late. The first missile hit his ship's shields, and they flickered. The second missile somehow passed right through the shields as if they were not there. The third missile hit the ship's main weapon, and the Destroyer of Hopes suddenly found itself defenseless. "How is this possible?" Zorath demanded. "Their technology is primitive." His science officer's face had gone pale. "Sir, these weapons are using principles we don't understand. The missiles seem to adapt to our defenses as they attack." More missiles came from the surface. The Destroyer of Hopes shook as explosion after explosion rocked the ship. Alarms screamed and lights flickered. "Retreat!" Captain Zorath ordered. "Get us back to the fleet!" The same scene played out over London and Tokyo. The 3 mighty Zephyrian warships that were supposed to destroy Earth's major cities found themselves running for their lives, damaged and confused. In the underground bunker beneath Colorado, Colonel Martinez watched the battle on her screens. Around her, technicians worked at computers that definitely had not existed the day before. "Phase 1 missiles performed perfectly," reported Dr. Kim. "The adaptive guidance systems completely confused their targeting computers." "And the shield penetrators?" "Better than expected. Their energy shields weren't designed to handle coherent quantum disruption fields. Colonel Martinez nodded. Send word to all hidden facilities. Execute Phase 2 preparations. It's time to show them what we've really been building. Aboard the Dominator, Emperor Vexthol stared at the reports from his 3 ship captains. Each told the same impossible story. The primitive humans had weapons that should not exist. This makes no sense, he said to Commander Zixtal. Our intelligence reports showed they barely had spaceflight capability. Perhaps our sensors were wrong, my lord. Or perhaps they were hiding their true technology. The Emperor's black eyes narrowed. Send down ground troops, 1,000 warriors. Let them see how their mysterious weapons work against soldiers in powered armor. The troop ships landed in Central Park in New York. Zephyrian soldiers poured out, expecting to face humans with simple guns and vehicles. What they found waiting for them was unlike anything in their military experience. The human soldiers moved like ghosts through the city. They appeared from nowhere, struck fast and hard, then vanished before the Zephyrians could respond. Their weapons seemed to know exactly where to hit to cause maximum damage to alien armor. Worse, the humans fought with a fury that was almost frightening. Sergeant Vectar had fought in campaigns across the galaxy. He had seen brave defenders and desperate resistance, but he had never seen anything like these humans. They did not just fight to win. They fought as if every alien on Earth was personally responsible for some terrible crime. Squad 7, report, he called into his communicator. Static answered him. Squad 7 was gone. Squad 3, respond. More static. In 30 minutes of fighting, Sergeant Vectar's unit of 1,000 soldiers had been reduced to less than 200, and they still had not seen most of their enemy. The humans hit them from buildings, from sewers, from vehicles that looked normal but carried weapons that could punch through battle armor. Even worse, the humans seemed to know exactly how Zephyrian equipment worked. Fall back to the landing zone, he ordered. But when his remaining soldiers reached Central Park, they found their ships burning. Human soldiers with rocket launchers stood among the wreckage, waiting for them. The battle was over in minutes. High above Earth, Captain Zorath watched his ground troop signals disappear one by one. The humans had somehow defeated 1,000 trained warriors in less than an hour. Get me a communication link to the surface, he demanded. A few minutes later, a human face appeared on his screen. It was a young woman in military uniform standing in front of burning Zephyrian equipment. This is Colonel Sarah Martinez of Earth Defense Command, she said calmly. I believe you have something that belongs to us. What are you talking about? Zorath asked. Your soldiers, the ones who landed uninvited on our planet. We have about 200 of them as prisoners. They will be treated according to our rules of war, which I think you'll find are more generous than yours. Captain Zorath felt something he had not experienced in decades of warfare, uncertainty. You are making a terrible mistake, he said. The Empire has resources you cannot imagine. Colonel Martinez smiled. And there was something in that smile that made Zorath's blood feel cold. Captain, she said, you have no idea what you've just awakened. The transmission cut off, leaving Zorath staring at a blank screen. Around him, his bridge crew looked confused and frightened. They had come to Earth expecting to face primitives with simple weapons. Instead, they had found an enemy that seemed to know their every weakness. An enemy that fought with technology that should not exist and fury that seemed beyond reason. For the first time in the history of the Zephyrian Empire, a conquest was not going according to plan. Emperor Vexthul stood in his war room, staring at the holographic display that showed his fleet around Earth. Red warning lights blinked where his ships had taken damage. It was the first time in 1,000 years that any fleet under his command had been hurt in the opening stages of a conquest. Bring me Admiral Korth, he ordered. We need more ships. Commander Zixtal looked uncomfortable. My lord, perhaps we should study these humans more carefully before sending additional forces. Study them? The Emperor's voice was like ice. They are primitives with a few hidden weapons. Send 5,000 ships if needed. Crush this resistance before it spreads to other worlds. What the Emperor did not know was that the resistance had already spread much further than he could imagine. On Mars, inside a colony that had been hidden from Earth's own population for 50 years, General Hassan received Colonel Martinez's coded transmission. Around him, the Red Planet's underground cities buzzed with activity as 1,000,000 colonists prepared for war. "All units, this is Mars Command," he broadcast to his fleet captains. "Operation Sleeping Giant is now active. Repeat, Operation Sleeping Giant is active." From hidden bases scattered across the Martian surface, ships began to emerge. Not the primitive rockets that Earth's governments used for their public space program, but sleek warships that had been built in secret factories for decades. On Europa, Jupiter's ice moon, Admiral Chen watched her displays as similar messages came in from across the solar system. Titan Base was online. The asteroid mining stations were revealing their true purpose as military outposts. Even tiny Pluto had a garrison that was now powering up weapons that could destroy a planet. "How many ships do we have total?" she asked her operations officer. 53,712 combat vessels, Admiral, plus support ships and carriers." Admiral Chen smiled grimly. The Zephyrians thought they were attacking one primitive world. They had no idea they were fighting an entire solar system that had been preparing for this day for longer than their empire had existed. But the biggest surprise was still to come. Deep in space, far beyond Pluto's orbit, something that had been drifting silent and cold for 30 years suddenly came to life. The TCS Vengeance was humanity's first true starship, built using technology that had been gathered from crashed alien vessels over the past century. Captain Rodriguez felt his ship wake up around him as the fusion reactors came online. "All stations report ready, sir," his first officer announced. "Signal the other deep space units," Rodriguez ordered. "Time to come home." Across the outer solar system, 49 more ships just like the Vengeance began moving toward Earth. Ships that no government on Earth officially knew about. Ships that had been waiting in the dark for exactly this moment. On Earth itself, Colonel Martinez stood in a command center that had not existed on any government map. Around her, screens showed the real picture of Earth's defenses. Not the simple military bases that the aliens had detected, but a network of hidden installations that stretched across every continent and deep under every ocean. "Admiral Chen, this is Earth Command," she said into her communicator. "You are cleared for Phase 3 operations." "Understood, Earth Command. All units, begin deployment." What happened next would have been impossible for any Zephyrian to believe, even if they had seen it with their own eyes. The surface of Mars opened like a flower blooming in fast motion. Hidden landing bays revealed themselves as massive doors slid back, and ships poured out like angry insects from a disturbed hive. Within an hour, 15,000 human warships had launched from the Red Planet. The same scene played out on Europa, Titan, and a dozen asteroid bases. Even Earth's own moon split open to reveal shipyards that had been hidden beneath fake craters. But the most shocking moment came when Captain Zorath detected massive energy readings approaching from deep space. "What am I looking at?" he demanded from his science officer. The alien's face was pale with fear. "Sir, those readings, they're starships, human starships, and they're using faster-than-light drives." "That's impossible. Our intelligence said they don't have FTL technology." "Sir, there are 50 of them. Each one is reading as large as one of our heavy cruisers." Captain Zorath felt something cold settle in his stomach. "How long have they had this technology?" Before his science officer could answer, communication channels across the Zephyrian fleet suddenly activated. But the voice that came through them was not alien. It was human, speaking perfect Zephyrian language. "Attention, Zephyrian fleet," the voice said calmly. "This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Human Liberation Navy. You are ordered to surrender your ships and prepare to be taken into custody for crimes against sentient species." On his flagship, Emperor Vexthul listened to the impossible transmission with growing rage and fear. "You will be tried according to the laws of civilized space," Admiral Chen continued. "Your crews will be treated with respect if they cooperate. Your officers will be held responsible for their actions during this illegal invasion." "Get me a transmission to this Admiral Chen," the Emperor snarled. A few moments later, a human woman appeared on his screen. She was young, probably less than half his age, but her eyes held the confidence of someone who had never known defeat. "I am Emperor Vexthul, ruler of 10,000 star systems. You will surrender your pathetic world immediately or face complete destruction." Admiral Chen smiled, and there was something in that expression that made the Emperor take a step backward. "Emperor," she said pleasantly, "I have some bad news for you. You see, you made a fundamental error. You assumed we were primitives because we wanted you to think that. You assumed we were weak because we let you believe it. And you assumed we were alone because you couldn't imagine the truth." "What truth?" the Emperor demanded. "The truth is that humanity has been watching the galaxy for a very long time. We know about your empire. We know about every species you've enslaved. We know about every world you've destroyed. And we've been preparing to stop you." On screens around his bridge, the Emperor watched as human ships surrounded his fleet. Somehow, in less than 6 hours, the humans had gone from a single primitive planet to a force that outnumbered his ships 10-1. "This is impossible," he whispered. "No," Admiral Chen replied. "This is justice. You came here to take our people as slaves. Instead, you're going to help us free every slave in your empire. Whether you cooperate or not is up to you." The transmission ended, and Emperor Vexthul was left staring at a display that showed human ships appearing from everywhere at once. Ships emerging from hyperspace, ships rising from planetary surfaces, ships that seemed to materialize out of empty space. For the first time in his long life, the master of 10,000 worlds realized he might have made a mistake, a very big mistake, and this was only the beginning. The battle for Earth's solar system lasted exactly 4 hours and 17 minutes. When it was over, the mighty Zephyrian fleet that had come to enslave humanity was nothing but floating wreckage and escape pods. Emperor Vexthul sat in a human prison cell aboard Admiral Chen's flagship, the TCS Liberation. Through the transparent wall, he could watch human engineers studying his captured ships, learning their secrets with frightening speed. "You cannot defeat the entire empire," he said when Admiral Chen came to visit him. "I have 10,000 worlds, billions of soldiers." Admiral Chen sat down across from him, her face calm. "Had," she corrected him. "You had 10,000 worlds. That number is getting smaller every hour." She activated a holographic display between them. It showed a map of the galaxy with thousands of star systems marked in red for Zephyrian control. But as the Emperor watched in horror, red systems began turning blue one by one. "What is this?" he whispered. "This is what happens when you threaten humanity's freedom," Admiral Chen explained. "You see, we didn't just build ships and weapons. We built something much more dangerous. We built hope." The display zoomed in on a system called Kepler 442. The Emperor recognized it as the location of a major slave labor camp where millions of beings from dozens of species worked in terrible conditions. "Watch carefully," Admiral Chen said. The display showed a Zephyrian garrison fleet of 200 ships guarding the slave world. Suddenly, human vessels appeared from hyperspace. Not just human ships, but vessels from every species the Zephyrians had enslaved, all working together. The battle was not even close. Human technology had always been superior to Zephyrian equipment, but now it was being used by beings who had personal reasons to hate the Empire. Ships crewed by former slaves fought with the fury of the oppressed, finally given the tools for revenge. "How?" the Emperor asked. "How are they working together? Different species cannot coordinate like this." "That's where you're wrong," Admiral Chen said. Different species can't coordinate the way Zephyrians do, through fear and force. But they can coordinate through something you never understood. They can coordinate through friendship. She switched the display to show another system, then another. Everywhere, the same scene played out. Human ships arrived carrying weapons and technology to former slaves. Local populations rose in rebellion. Zephyrian garrisons found themselves outnumbered and outgunned. But it was not just the military victories that destroyed the Empire. It was what came after. On the world of Zerion Prime, a former Zephyrian fortress planet, Captain Rodriguez of the Vengeance stood in what had been the governor's palace. Around him, beings from 20 different species worked together to establish a new government. The supply ships from Earth should arrive next week, he told the Council of Former Slaves. Food, medical supplies, and construction equipment, everything you need to rebuild. An insectoid being named Klaxtar, who had been a slave for 60 years, looked at the human captain with something like wonder. "Why do you do this? You could take this world for yourselves." Captain Rodriguez smiled. "Because that's not who we are. We didn't fight the Zephyrians to build our own empire. We fought them to make sure no one would ever be enslaved again." Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out on hundreds of worlds. Human ships arrived not as conquerors, but as liberators, bringing aid and assistance to beings who had suffered under Zephyrian rule for generations. But the humans also brought something else: knowledge. Dr. Kim, the scientist who had developed the weapons that first surprised the Zephyrians, now worked with research teams from dozens of species. Together, they created technology that no single species could have imagined. The Zephyrians always believed that conquest was the only way to spread civilization, she explained to a group of alien scientists. They never understood that cooperation creates much more powerful results. The proof was in the results. Within months of liberation, former slave worlds were producing technology that surpassed anything the Empire had ever created. More importantly, they were sharing that technology freely with other liberated worlds. Meanwhile, the Zephyrian Empire continued to collapse at an accelerating rate. Entire sectors declared independence. Governors abandoned their posts and fled with whatever ships they could steal. The military, seeing defeat everywhere, began surrendering without fighting. Emperor Vexthul watched it all from his prison cell, his 10,000-year empire crumbling in real time. "You don't understand," he said desperately to Admiral Chen during one of her visits. "Without the Empire, there will be chaos. These species need strong leadership. They need to be controlled." Admiral Chen's expression turned cold. "You know what they actually need? They need to be free to make their own choices, something you never gave them the chance to do." She showed him another display, this one of the Zephyrian homeworld. The planet where his species had ruled the galaxy for millennia was now surrounded by ships from every corner of space. Not human ships this time, but vessels crewed by every species the Zephyrians had enslaved. "Your people have a choice," Admiral Chen said. "They can surrender peacefully and join the new galactic community as equals, or they can continue to fight for an empire that no longer exists." The Emperor stared at the screen, watching ships from a dozen former slave worlds closing in on his homeworld. "And if they choose to fight?" Admiral Chen's voice was quietly final. "Then they will learn what happens when you declare war on the entire galaxy." On Zephyria Prime, the last Loyalist commanders prepared for a final battle they knew they could not win. Some chose to surrender, opening their cities to the Allied forces. Others chose to fight to the end. The battle was swift and decisive. The Zephyrian military, built for conquering primitive worlds, could not stand against unified forces that included the best technology and tactics from hundreds of species, all coordinated by human strategic thinking. When the capital city fell, 10,000 years of galactic tyranny finally came to an end. But Admiral Chen felt no satisfaction as she watched the ancient palace burn. Too many beings had suffered for too long. Too many worlds had been destroyed. The victory was necessary, but the cost had been enormous. "Admiral," her communications officer called, "we're receiving surrender transmissions from the remaining Zephyrian fleets. All of them." Chen nodded slowly. "Acknowledge their surrenders. Begin prisoner processing protocols. And send word to all liberated worlds. The war is over." As news of victory spread across the galaxy, celebrations erupted on thousands of worlds. But in her quiet command center, Admiral Chen was already thinking about what came next. Winning the war had been the easy part. Now they had to build something better than what they had destroyed. They had to prove that freedom could create a civilization more powerful and lasting than any empire built on conquest. And they had to do it together. 1 year after the fall of the Zephyrian Empire, the galaxy looked like a completely different place. Where once there had been 10,000 slave worlds ruled by fear, now there were 10,000 free worlds working together by choice. Admiral Chen stood on the observation deck of the newly built Galactic Cooperation Station, watching ships from hundreds of different species dock at the massive space station. Each vessel brought delegates to the first truly democratic galactic government in known history. "Hard to believe it's only been a year," said Captain Rodriguez, joining her at the window. "Sometimes I still can't believe we actually did it," Chen replied. "A year ago, most humans didn't even know there were aliens. Now we're helping coordinate a galactic civilization." Through the transparent aluminum, they watched a massive transport ship arrive from the Zirion system. It carried not weapons or soldiers, but teachers and doctors, former slaves who were now helping to rebuild worlds that had been devastated by centuries of imperial rule. The transformation had been remarkable. Once the Zephyrian military structure collapsed, the liberated worlds had not descended into chaos as the Emperor had predicted. Instead, they had formed cooperative councils, sharing resources and knowledge in ways that created prosperity none of them had ever experienced under imperial rule. Dr. Kim walked up to join them, carrying a datapad filled with reports from across the galaxy. "The latest production figures," she announced cheerfully. "Food production is up 300% across all liberated worlds. Medical technology has advanced more in the past year than it did in the previous century. And we've had 0 military conflicts between member species." "What about the Zephyrians?" Admiral Chen asked. "That's more complicated," Dr. Kim admitted. "The Zephyrian people themselves had faced a choice after their empire fell. Some had embraced the new order, working to make amends for their species' crimes. Others had retreated to isolated worlds, unable to accept that their 10,000-year dominance was over. But the most surprising development had come from an unexpected source: former Emperor Vexthal himself. In his prison cell, the fallen ruler had spent months studying human history and philosophy. He had read about Earth's own wars, about how humans had eventually learned to cooperate despite their differences. Slowly, painfully, he had begun to understand what his empire had really been. "I want to speak to the Galactic Council," he had told Admiral Chen during their last meeting. "I want to tell them. I want to try to help them understand my people." Now, in the great assembly hall of the Cooperation Station, delegates from across the galaxy listened as the former emperor spoke. "For 10,000 years, Vexthul said, his voice quiet and filled with shame, "my people believed that strength meant domination. We thought that to be powerful, we had to make others weak. We never understood that true strength comes from helping others become strong." The hall was silent. Many of the delegates were beings whose worlds had suffered under Zephyrian rule. Some had lost family members to imperial violence. All of them had reasons to hate the being standing before them. "I cannot undo what my empire did," he continued. "I cannot bring back the dead or heal all the wounds we caused. But I can offer you something that might help: the knowledge of where we went wrong, so that no one ever makes the same mistakes again." When he finished speaking, the hall remained quiet for long minutes. Then, slowly, a delegate from the Zarion system stood up. "I was a slave in your mines for 40 years, she said. "I watched my children grow up in chains because of your laws. I have every reason to hate you." Vexthul bowed his head, unable to meet her eyes. "But," she continued, "the humans taught us something important. They taught us that the goal is not revenge. The goal is making sure this never happens again. If you truly want to help with that goal, then we will listen." Other delegates began to stand one by one, not to condemn the former emperor, but to accept his offer to help build something better. Admiral Chen watched from the gallery, feeling a mixture of pride and amazement. A year ago, she had been preparing for the destruction of Earth. Now she was watching former enemies work together to build a peaceful galaxy. "Ma'am," her aide whispered, "there's a transmission for you from Earth." Chen made her way to a private communication booth and activated the link. President Martinez appeared on the screen. She had been elected to lead Earth's new unified government after the crisis had brought the planet together. "Sarah," the president said with a smile, "I have some news I thought you'd want to hear personally. Good news, I hope?" "The best. The Galactic Archaeological Council has made their final report on human origins. It turns out we're not alone after all. They've found evidence of at least 12 other species that evolved independently to develop the same values we have: cooperation, freedom, the idea that all intelligent beings deserve respect." Admiral Chen felt a warmth spreading through her chest. "We're not unique. We're not unique, but we're not common either. The archaeologists think that only about one species in a million develops along the path we took. Most either destroy themselves or become like the Zephyrians. So why are there 12 species like us?" President Martinez grinned. "Because the galaxy is a very big place. And because when species like ours meet, they recognize each other immediately. 3 of the other human-like species have already sent ambassadors. They want to join our Galactic Cooperation Project." After the call ended, Admiral Chen returned to the observation deck. The view was the same, but somehow it looked different now. The ships moving between the docking bays were not just carrying trade goods and diplomatic messages. They were carrying hope, the hope that intelligent beings could live together without fear, without oppression, without the need for empire. Captain Rodriguez found her there an hour later, still watching the peaceful traffic of a free galaxy. "Thinking about anything in particular?" he asked. "Just thinking about how much has changed," she replied. "A year ago, humanity was alone and hiding. Now we're part of something bigger than we ever imagined possible." She paused, watching a small ship from the former Zephyrian homeworld dock next to a massive freighter from the Zarion system. "You know what the strangest part is?" she said. "The Zephyrians came here thinking they were going to enslave us. Instead, we enslaved them." Rodriguez looked confused. "Ma'am?" Admiral Chen smiled. "We enslaved them to the idea that cooperation is stronger than conquest. We enslaved them to the belief that freedom creates more prosperity than oppression. We enslaved them to the knowledge that helping others makes you stronger than crushing them." She turned away from the window and looked at her old friend. "And now they're as committed to those ideas as we are. That's the kind of slavery I can live with." As they walked away from the observation deck, neither of them noticed the small figure watching from the shadows. Former Emperor Vexthul had been granted limited freedom to move around the station as part of his rehabilitation program. He stood at the window they had just left, looking out at the busy traffic of the new galactic civilization. Ships from his former empire worked alongside vessels from worlds that had once been slave colonies, all of them flying under the banner of the Galactic Cooperation Council, a symbol that showed every species working together as equals. For 10,000 years, his ancestors had ruled through fear and force. In less than 1 year, the humans had created something that was stronger, more prosperous, and more stable than anything his empire had ever achieved. And they had done it by treating their enemies as potential friends. Vexthul pulled out a small notebook and began to write. Someday, when he was ready, he would share these observations with other species. Not as a former emperor giving commands, but as a student sharing what he had learned about the true meaning of strength. Outside the window, the free galaxy continued its work, building a future that no one could have imagined when 500 Zephyrian ships had first arrived to enslave humanity. The species that had thought they were conquerors had instead awakened something far more powerful than any empire, the dream of universal freedom. And that dream, once awakened, could never be put back to sleep.